Hello YouTube, got another book review for you here, and this time I actually happen to have the book with me. I apologize for not showing the actual physical books in some of my other reviews because I have such a large collection of books that I tend to lend them out to friends, usually, after I've already read them, that way I can share the experience with other people. But today I actually do happen to have the book with me, and today I'm going to be reviewing one of the books in this book, which is actually a collection of books that is called Huncke's Journal, which is part of this book, which is the Herbert Huncke Reader. This book actually contains several books. It contains Huncke's Journal, as well as The Evening Sun Turned Crimson, as well as part of his autobiography, which is entitled Guilty of Everything. And there's even some bonus material in there that wasn't released in any of the other books as well, so I highly recommend this book. I have not even finished it yet. Actually, I've only read Huncke's Journal out of it, and I'm very much looking forward to reading the rest of it when I get around to it. I really highly recommend it. So, let me just light up this piece of the cigarette I got right here. Got my last little tiny cigarette here. But yeah, Huncke's Journal. Huncke's Journal was published by Herbert Huncke and came out in 1965. The actual book itself is quite rare. There were not that many copies made of it, and it's not a very well-known book. So if you're going to get it, you're most likely going to have to get yourself a copy of the Herbert Huncke Reader in order to read it. It's the first book in there. So, basically the premise of it is it's some excerpts taken from his actual literal journal that describe some short stories about his life in between the years, I want to say, the mid-1930s, maybe even early 1930s, to about the year maybe 1960, if I had to say roughly. For those of you who don't know, Herbert Huncke is one of the lesser-known beat writers. He is, unfortunately, or however you want to look at it, I guess, pretty much most famous for being the guy who actually shot up William S. Burroughs for his first time, even though in the book Junkie it does not say that. That is actually the way that it went down. In the book Junkie, it says that, William S. Burroughs just injected himself the morphine syringe one day in his apartment alone. That is actually not the case. Herbert Huncke was the man who actually physically injected it into him and had been using junk in its various forms for a few years prior, at least a few years prior to William S. Burroughs ever even trying it. So, Herbert Huncke is known, basically... Damn it, this one out. Well, that's okay. Herbert Huncke is basically known for being the more criminal of the beats. He was very connected with the underworld. He was kind of like a street guy. He didn't really have any residence, really. He lived in other people's apartments. He didn't really pay rent. He didn't have a job. He was a burglar. He was a drug addict. He had been to jail several times. He was a pretty rough guy, But the other beats, some of the younger ones, or even William S. Burroughs is actually 1 year older than Herbert Huncke. Herbert Huncke was born in 1915. a lot of the younger beats like Allen Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac, Neil Cassidy, Gregory Corso, those guys, the main beats. Even William S. Burroughs himself, actually, I should include in this, even though he's slightly older, were very influenced by Huncke's unique knowledge that they didn't really know anything about prior to meeting him. He opened a door to, the rougher side of life, or maybe not rougher, maybe I should say more raw, the street life. And there's an interesting story about how Herbert Huncke first came to Manhattan or New York, or just New York really. And it is that he was dropped off at 103rd and Broadway, and he wanted to know how to get to Times Square. He was very interested in Times Square. And at that time, and for many decades, prior and after, Times Square was a rough area. Let me tell you, you did not want to go down there from anywhere from, I want to say maybe like 1930 to even 1990. You did not want to go down Times Square. It is nothing like it was today. It was a rough area. There was hookers, there was drug dealers, there was scammers, robbers, thieves. People beat you up for a dime. Kid you not. It's unbelievable to think that it used to be that way in comparison to what it is today. But he wanted to go down there, and he wanted to interact with these people, and he wasn't that old yet. I don't exactly know when he went down there, but I would have to say it was probably sometime during possibly the late 1930s, maybe even as late as 1940, somewhere around there. But to cut to the chase, he basically was told, oh, all you gotta do is walk all the way down Broadway. So he walked down Broadway 61 blocks. And when he got down there, he said he loved it. And it was a rough area, but he didn't care. He was just looking for excitement and to meet people and just to have any kind of experiences and meet any kind of people that he could. And he admits that he was very fortunate throughout his life that he was never really met anyone who wanted to hurt him or really mess him up or kill him or whatever, because as a young guy going down there by yourself, you don't really got too much money or nothing. I don't know, he must have had some luck to make it through the things he made to trying to do that shit back in those days, I'll tell you what. And that's really how he started off, He was known as, some people have referred to him as the 42nd Street Hustler. He was also known as Huncke the Junkie. And basically the book just tells short stories, like I said before, about his life. They're only a few pages each. They're all very interesting. Some of them describe some significantly disturbing events that occurred to him. And the book's not really that long. I mean, let me give it a look. I'm pretty sure it's actually possibly even under 100 pages. It is 75 pages. And the pages are, they're not that jam-packed. I mean, some of them are like kind of short, like this, They have different titles, the print is decently sized. It's not really that jam-packed, so it's kind of a quick read. But I find that it really sinks you in, and that you personally, for me, I really enjoyed it. I would rate it pretty highly. I would possibly give it maybe like a 7.5 to an 8 rating. And I really like the book. Now, it's kind of hard to describe, exactly what the stories are about, because none of them are really related to each other, or they're all different events that happened in his life. But, they cover different things about, different people he knew, or different little things that happened. There's even a few things in here that are, like, little poems or little made up stories or prose, about things that didn't really happen. There's one or two things like that, but a lot of them are, real things that happened to him. Some of them are dated, like this one right here is dated October 31st, 1961. So, yeah, I guess, excuse me, before when I said that it went to 1960, there is some of it that actually, I forgot, does cover the earlier half of the 1960s. And, yeah, it's a pretty good book. It gives you an interesting insight to kind of who he was, and it was material that at the time when he was writing it, he didn't really expect it to get published. He was kind of just writing for writing. Like Herbert Huncke, none of the things that he really wrote were necessarily like strictly written to be like the other beat writers, where it's like, I want to publish like this book, like this is my like goal. You know what I mean? He was more kind of just like, I just like to write, and I want to be a writer, and I'm just gonna write some stuff, and if people like it, they can publish it, and if not, I'll just let that be. He wasn't very he didn't really have the I don't know if I would say the drive, but I can't really think of a better term. He didn't really have the, like with Kerouac or with Burroughs, they thought that it was like kind of more like their whole destiny, like, like they were so like Kerouac glued to the typewriter, constantly typing insane on Benzedrine and all that crazy stuff. Herbert Huncke was more laid back, and he kind of has a similar writing style to, I would say, maybe like, it almost reminds me of like a cross between some of the earlier Burroughs work, like Junkie and Queer, that kind of stuff, and Allen Ginsberg. It kind of reminds me of like a cross between those to an extent. Maybe a little bit of the Kerouac flavor. There is some of the, extended imagery that kind of reminds me of Kerouac, but actually, now that I really think about it, to be honest with you, the imagery has more of a Ginsberg flavor to it, in my opinion, so that's really how I would describe his writing. But it's a really good book. I would rate it pretty highly. I would highly recommend it, as I would with all the books that I'll be doing reviews on. A lot of the books I'm going to be reviewing are going to be beat writings, because that's my main focus, but I'm going to review a few other ones, so don't think that it's all just going to be beat work, but I will say the majority of it is going to be beat writing. So I guess that's all for today, so thank you, YouTube. Keep watching.